In today's episode, we examine 5 fatal snake encounters. From a grandfather protecting his family in Arizona to a hiker in Virginia, these venomous bites ended tragically. We start in the Amazon, where one researcher's overconfidence proved deadly. It was March 15, 2023, when the Amazon rainforest of Peru claimed the life of a seasoned researcher in one of the most remote scientific outposts on Earth. The research station, nestled deep within the Madre de Dios region, sat surrounded by dense jungle canopy that filtered sunlight into dappled shadows across the forest floor. Recent flooding from the rainy season had transformed normally passable trails into treacherous waterways, forcing most personnel to evacuate weeks earlier. The nearest medical facility lay over 200 miles away through impassable terrain, accessible only by helicopter during favorable weather conditions. Gregory Stanton, a 47-year-old herpetologist with 2 decades of experience studying venomous snakes, had chosen to remain behind despite warnings from station coordinator Maria Santos. His obsession with completing breakthrough research on anti-venom development had consumed his personal life, contributing to his recent divorce and estrangement from colleagues who viewed his methods as increasingly reckless. Dr. James Mitchell, his research partner, was scheduled to arrive the following week, but Gregory's impatience to continue his work had proven fatal. The station's anti-venom supply had expired 3 months prior, with replacement shipments delayed by the severe weather that had also damaged their communication equipment. Gregory's isolation was complete, surrounded by thousands of square miles of impenetrable rainforest. The fer-de-lance, known scientifically as Bothrops asper, ranks among Central and South America's most dangerous serpents. These pit vipers can reach lengths of 8 feet and possess hemotoxic venom capable of causing severe tissue destruction and internal bleeding. Their heat-sensing pits allow them to detect temperature differences from warm-blooded animals, while their defensive nature when threatened makes them responsible for numerous snakebite fatalities throughout their range. Adult specimens possess fangs up to an inch in length that can penetrate deep into tissue to deliver venom directly into blood vessels and muscle. The venom contains enzymes that break down blood cells and damage blood vessel walls. That morning, Gregory entered the specimen room to extract venom from a particularly large fer-de-lance he had captured days earlier. The snake appeared less active from the cool overnight temperature, encouraging Gregory to handle it without proper restraint equipment. As he attempted to grip the serpent behind its head, the snake became agitated by his handling. The fer-de-lance twisted defensively in his grip, causing Gregory's fingers to slip forward on its neck. In that instant, the snake struck reflexively, driving its fangs deep into Gregory's forearm. The bite delivered a significant amount of potent hemotoxic venom directly into Gregory's tissue. He dropped the snake and stumbled backward, watching 2 puncture wounds begin bleeding steadily. The venom immediately began attacking red blood cells and blood vessel walls throughout his arm. Gregory attempted to apply a makeshift tourniquet using his belt, but the constriction only worsened tissue damage. Within an hour, severe pain radiated up his arm as the toxins spread through his circulatory system. His forearm began swelling noticeably as internal bleeding increased and tissue around the bite site started breaking down. He attempted to reach the damaged radio equipment, but found his coordination gradually deteriorating. The hemotoxic venom caused progressive destruction of blood cells throughout his body, leading to internal hemorrhaging. Gregory's condition fluctuated over several hours, with periods where he felt slightly better, followed by worsening symptoms. His arm became severely swollen and discolored as tissue death spread from the bite site. Blood began seeping from his gums and nose as the venom affected his blood's ability to clot properly. After 12 hours, Gregory's blood pressure dropped dangerously low as his kidneys struggled to filter the massive amounts of destroyed tissue and cellular debris. The venom had caused such extensive blood cell destruction that his kidneys began failing. Gregory experienced episodes of confusion and weakness as his body's systems became overwhelmed. His breathing became labored as fluid accumulated in his lungs from the failing cardiovascular system. Gregory lost consciousness as his body went into shock from blood loss and organ failure. The combination of severe severe tissue destruction, kidney failure, and cardiovascular collapse overwhelmed his body's ability to survive. He died from multiple organ failure 18 hours after the bite, alone in the remote research station, with only the sounds of the rainforest surrounding his final moments. Station personnel discovered Gregory's body when Dr. Mitchell arrived a week later, finding his colleague collapsed beside the damaged radio equipment. The makeshift tourniquet remained around his severely swollen and blackened arm. Peruvian authorities launched an investigation into safety protocols at remote research facilities, while the scientific community mourned the loss of a respected but controversial researcher. Gregory's ex-wife released a statement expressing grief while noting his dangerous obsession with his work had ultimately cost him his life. The research station was temporarily closed pending a comprehensive safety review, and new protocols were implemented requiring minimum 2-person teams for all venomous snake handling. Gregory Stanton's story showed how overconfidence can prove fatal in remote places. For Dylan Reeves, it wasn't isolation that threatened him, but a grandfather's protective instincts facing Arizona's deadliest serpent. It was August 3rd, 2023, when a family barbecue in suburban Phoenix, Arizona, turned into a nightmare that would claim the life of a beloved grandfather. The Reeves family home sat on a sprawling 2-acre lot in the Ahwatukee foothills, where desert landscape met residential development. The property backed up against undeveloped desert terrain, creating a natural corridor for wildlife seeking water and shelter during the scorching summer months when temperatures regularly exceeded 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Dylan Reeves, a 67-year-old retired elementary school teacher, had spent the morning preparing for his monthly family gathering. His daughter Jennifer, a registered nurse, had arrived early with her children Tommy and Sarah, ages 6 and 8, respectively. Dylan's backyard featured a large garden area where he grew vegetables and maintained a small pond that attracted various desert creatures. The recent extreme heat had driven wildlife closer to residential areas in search of water sources. Dylan suffered from a heart condition requiring daily medication, but had forgotten to take his morning dose due to the excitement of preparing for the family gathering. He remained active and devoted to his grandchildren's safety above all else. The western diamondback rattlesnake ranks as Arizona's most dangerous serpent and one of North America's most formidable pit vipers. These snakes can reach lengths of 5 feet and possess hemotoxic venom designed to break down blood cells and tissue over time. Their distinctive diamond-patterned scales provide perfect camouflage among desert rocks and vegetation. Western diamondbacks are highly defensive when threatened and can strike across distances up to half their body length. Their venom contains enzymes that gradually destroy red blood cells, damage blood vessel walls, and prevent proper blood clotting, with effects typically developing over many hours. The encounter occurred when Tommy discovered a large western diamondback coiled near Dylan's garden pond, where it had come to drink during the afternoon heat. Dylan immediately moved the children to safety and grabbed a garden rake, intending to guide the snake back toward the desert. As he carefully maneuvered the rake near the 4-foot rattlesnake, the defensive serpent struck quickly, its fangs penetrating through Dylan's thin gardening glove into his wrist before he could pull back. The bite delivered venom into the tissue of Dylan's wrist through 2 distinct puncture wounds. Jennifer immediately applied pressure to control the bleeding while calling emergency services. Dylan remained calm and alert, reassuring his frightened grandchildren while they waited for help. The bite site began showing mild swelling and discoloration, but Dylan's symptoms initially appeared manageable. Paramedics arrived within 12 minutes and transported him to the nearest trauma center, where emergency physicians began monitoring his condition and administered supportive care. Dylan's initial recovery progressed normally for the first several hours. The swelling in his arm increased gradually, and he experienced moderate pain that was controlled with medication. However, the combination of extreme heat, dehydration from working outdoors, and his missed heart medication created dangerous conditions. As evening approached, Dylan's cardiovascular system began showing signs of stress from fighting the venom effects and the day's physical demands. 8 hours after the bite, Dylan's condition suddenly deteriorated. His blood pressure became unstable as the venom's effects on his blood cells and vessels combined with his underlying heart condition. The stress of envenomation, dehydration, and missed cardiac medication created a perfect storm of complications. Dylan began experiencing chest pain and irregular heart rhythms as his compromised cardiovascular system struggled to cope with the physiological demands. Despite being in a medical facility with immediate access to advanced cardiac care, Dylan suffered a massive heart attack 10 hours after the snake bite. The combination of venom effects, heat exhaustion, dehydration, and his pre-existing heart condition had overwhelmed his body's ability to maintain normal circulation. Medical staff performed aggressive resuscitation efforts, but Dylan's heart could not recover from the multiple stressors. He died from cardiac arrest caused by the combined effects of snake envenomation complications and underlying cardiovascular disease. The incident prompted Phoenix City officials to review wildlife management policies in desert-adjacent neighborhoods. The Arizona Game and Fish Department issued new guidelines for homeowners about creating barriers around water features and proper response procedures when encountering venomous reptiles. Jennifer Reeves established a foundation promoting snakebite awareness and the importance of medication compliance in elderly patients. The family received hundreds of condolence messages from former students whose lives Dylan had touched during his teaching career. Medical experts noted that Dylan's case highlighted the importance of consistent medication schedules and hydration, especially for elderly individuals living in desert environments. Dylan Reeves showed how health complications can prove fatal, even with medical care. For Jasmine Cole, it wasn't protective instincts, but teenage recklessness that led her to Georgia's deadliest serpent. It was June 18, 2023, when a teenage dare in rural Georgia turned deadly at an abandoned textile warehouse outside Valdosta. The crumbling industrial building had sat empty for over a decade, its broken windows and collapsed sections creating perfect shelter for wildlife seeking cool, dark spaces during the sweltering summer heat. The warehouse's basement storage areas provided ideal denning sites for Georgia's most dangerous reptiles. Jasmine Cole, a 17-year-old high school senior, had driven to the location with 4 friends seeking content for her social media accounts. Known for posting increasingly dangerous stunts to gain followers, Jasmine had built a reputation for taking risks that others wouldn't consider. Her boyfriend Marcus Johnson frequently encouraged these activities, while her best friend Ashley Martinez had grown concerned about Jasmine's escalating behavior. 2 years earlier, Jasmine had been bitten by a copperhead during a camping trip, requiring hospital treatment and creating potential sensitivity to snake venom proteins. The eastern diamondback rattlesnake stands as the largest venomous snake in North America and Georgia's most formidable serpent. These massive pit vipers can exceed 6 feet in length and possess the most potent venom of any North American rattlesnake. Their distinctive diamond pattern provides excellent camouflage among fallen leaves and debris. Eastern diamondbacks prefer secluded areas like abandoned buildings where they can establish dens. Their venom contains powerful hemotoxic compounds that destroy blood cells and tissue, along with proteins that can trigger severe allergic reactions in previously sensitized individuals. The group entered the warehouse through a broken loading dock door and began exploring before descending into the basement storage area. In a corner room filled with old machinery and concrete debris, they discovered a massive eastern diamondback coiled in the shadows. Upon detecting the intruders, the rattlesnake began vibrating its tail and raising its head in a defensive posture. Marcus immediately dared Jasmine to approach the agitated snake for a close-up video. Despite Ashley's attempts to physically stop her, Jasmine pushed past her friend to accept the challenge. Jasmine activated her phone's camera and began approaching the defensive rattlesnake, narrating her actions for the video. The snake continued rattling loudly as she moved closer, its heat-sensing pits tracking her movement. When Jasmine extended her phone to within 18 inches of the serpent, the eastern diamondback struck with explosive speed. Its massive fangs penetrated deep into her forearm, injecting a large amount of venom before she could react. Jasmine screamed and jerked backward as the snake maintained its grip briefly before releasing and coiling defensively again. The bite created 2 deep puncture wounds that began bleeding profusely. Her friends rushed to help as Marcus called emergency services while Ashley applied pressure to the wounds. The group helped Jasmine outside to wait for the ambulance, with her remaining conscious initially. However, within 10 minutes of the bite, Jasmine began developing symptoms that indicated her body was having an abnormal reaction to the venom due to her previous snakebite exposure. Red welts appeared across Jasmine's skin as her immune system recognized the similar venom proteins from her earlier copperhead bite. Her breathing became increasingly labored as her throat began swelling from the allergic reaction. The anaphylactic response progressed rapidly, with Jasmine's airway constricting as her body released massive amounts of histamine. Her friends watched helplessly as she struggled to breathe, her face and neck swelling visibly. Jasmine's condition deteriorated rapidly as anaphylactic shock set in. Her blood pressure dropped dramatically while her heart rate increased as her cardiovascular system struggled to maintain circulation. The swelling in her throat became so severe that air could barely pass through her airway. Her skin turned blue from lack of oxygen as respiratory failure began. 15 minutes after the bite, Jasmine lost consciousness as her brain was deprived of adequate oxygen. The remote location delayed emergency response, with paramedics arriving 28 minutes after the initial call. They immediately recognized the signs of severe anaphylaxis combined with snake envenomation. The team performed emergency intubation and administered epinephrine, corticosteroids, and antivenom treatment. However, Jasmine had been without adequate oxygen for over 10 minutes. Her brain had suffered significant damage from the prolonged hypoxia. Despite aggressive treatment, Jasmine's condition continued to deteriorate. The combination of severe allergic reaction, massive envenomation, and prolonged oxygen deprivation had caused irreversible damage to multiple organ systems. Jasmine died from respiratory failure and cardiovascular collapse caused by anaphylactic shock triggered by her previous sensitization to snake venom proteins. The incident prompted Georgia authorities to increase security around abandoned buildings and launch investigations into social media challenges involving dangerous wildlife encounters. Jasmine's school district implemented new programs educating students about the risks of seeking online fame through dangerous activities. Jasmine Cole's tragedy showed how previous wildlife encounters can create deadly complications. For Spencer Wallace, it wasn't recklessness, but family responsibilities that led him to Louisiana's most elusive and deadly serpent. It was September 12th, 2023, when the demands of supporting a young family led to a deadly encounter at a rural auto repair shop outside Lafayette, Louisiana. The small garage sat isolated along a seldom-traveled back road, surrounded by dense cypress swamps that provided perfect habitat for the region's most secretive serpents. The shop's location meant that wildlife frequently sought shelter in dark spaces beneath the building during cooler autumn nights. Spencer Wallace, a 28-year-old mechanic, had been working at the shop for 3 years while supporting his wife, Maria, and their 6-month-old daughter. Known for his willingness to help stranded motorists regardless of the hour, Spencer often took emergency calls to supplement his modest income. That night, he had received a call from a driver whose car had broken down on the remote highway. Spencer's dedication to providing for his growing family had led him to work increasingly long hours, often alone at the shop during nights and weekends. The eastern coral snake represents one of North America's most dangerous yet elusive serpents, despite its small size and secretive nature. These brightly banded snakes rarely exceed 3 feet in length, but possess potent neurotoxic venom that attacks the nervous system with deadly efficiency. Their distinctive red, yellow, and black bands serve as a warning, though their shy disposition means encounters with humans are extremely rare. Unlike rattlesnakes, coral snakes deliver venom through small, fixed fangs that inject neurotoxins evolved to paralyze prey. The venom works slowly and silently, producing minimal initial symptoms while gradually shutting down the victim's respiratory system. The customer's vehicle had been sitting motionless for several hours when Spencer arrived to begin the emergency repair. He successfully fixed the electrical problem, sending the customer on their way near midnight. Spencer began cleaning up his workspace and organizing tools in the storage area behind the shop. Unknown to him, an eastern coral snake had taken shelter beneath a pile of old tires and automotive parts, seeking protection from the cooling temperatures. Spencer reached into the dark storage area to retrieve a wrench that had fallen behind the tire pile. His hand disturbed the small snake hidden in the debris beneath the stored materials. The startled coral snake, with no escape route available, defensively bit Spencer's index finger before quickly retreating deeper into the pile. Spencer pulled his hand back and used his phone's flashlight, catching a glimpse of the snake's distinctive banded pattern as it disappeared. He examined his finger under the work light, finding only 2 tiny puncture wounds that barely bled. Having grown up in Louisiana, Spencer recognized the coral snake, but had heard conflicting information about their danger level. The bite seemed insignificant compared to rattlesnake encounters he had heard about, leading Spencer to continue his cleanup work. He washed the wound with soap and water, but decided against seeking immediate medical attention due to the late hour and minimal symptoms. The neurotoxic venom began its silent work immediately. Though Spencer noticed no obvious symptoms during the first 2 hours, he finished organizing the shop and completed paperwork, feeling only slight soreness at the bite site. The coral snake's venom contains powerful neurotoxins that block nerve signals throughout the body, but produces few visible external symptoms during early stages. Spencer attributed his mild fatigue to the late hour and long workday. Over the next 4 hours, Spencer began experiencing subtle symptoms that he dismissed as exhaustion. Slight dizziness and mild nausea seemed consistent with working past midnight, while barely perceptible weakness in his hands appeared related to the repair work. The neurotoxic venom was systematically blocking nerve transmission throughout his body, but the effects remained nearly imperceptible until they reached critical levels. Spencer dozed fitfully in his office chair, unaware his condition was deteriorating. As dawn approached, Spencer's condition deteriorated rapidly as the venom reached his respiratory system. His breathing became increasingly shallow as the neurotoxins paralyzed the muscles responsible for lung function. Spencer attempted to reach his phone, but found his coordination severely impaired. He collapsed at his workbench as respiratory paralysis set in, unable to call for assistance as his nervous system shut down. The venom had silently blocked the nerve signals controlling his breathing, leading to complete respiratory failure. Spencer died from respiratory paralysis caused by eastern coral snake neurotoxins, his body showing no obvious external signs except 2 tiny puncture wounds on his finger. Frank Rodriguez, the shop owner, discovered Spencer's body when he arrived for the morning shift, initially unable to determine the cause until the small bite marks were noticed during medical examination. The incident prompted Louisiana health officials to issue warnings about coral snake encounters in rural work environments. Spencer's family received support from the local community and co-workers, who established a fund for Maria and their infant daughter. The Louisiana Department of Wildlife developed new safety protocols for workers in rural locations. Spencer Wallace showed how small venomous snakes prove deadly when bites go unrecognized. For Natalie Crawford, academic ambition led her to Virginia's mountains facing a seemingly harmless encounter. It was October 7, 2023, when academic ambition led to a fatal encounter in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia. Natalie Crawford, a 31-year-old marketing executive, had taken a weekend hiking trip with her boyfriend David Chen to celebrate her recent promotion. The couple had chosen a popular section of the Appalachian Trail near Shenandoah National Park, where well-maintained paths wound through dense hardwood forests. The thick leaf litter covering the forest floor provided perfect camouflage for the region's wildlife. David, a certified EMT with the Richmond Fire Department, had suggested the hiking trip as a way to unwind from Natalie's stressful work schedule. Natalie, an experienced hiker, appeared to be in excellent physical health. However, she had been managing type 2 diabetes for several years and had been under significant stress from working 12-hour days for months. Her compromised immune system from poorly controlled blood sugar levels had left her more vulnerable to infections. The October weather had been unusually warm, creating ideal conditions for reptiles that remained active later into the fall season. The copperhead represents one of the most common venomous snakes in Virginia. These pit vipers typically measure 2 to 3 feet in length and possess distinctive hourglass-shaped crossbands across their copper-colored bodies. Their excellent camouflage among fallen leaves makes them nearly invisible on forest floors during autumn months. Copperheads are generally docile snakes that prefer to remain motionless when threatened, relying on camouflage rather than aggressive behavior. Their hemotoxic venom is relatively mild compared to other pit vipers. While copperhead bites are painful, fatalities are extremely rare in healthy adults. The attack occurred during the afternoon as Natalie and David hiked along a scenic ridge trail. Natalie spotted a beautiful overlook and stepped off the main trail through thick fallen leaves to position herself for a photograph. The dense layer of colorful autumn foliage concealed a copperhead that had been resting in the warm afternoon sun. As Natalie moved into position, she inadvertently stepped within striking distance of the well-camouflaged snake. The copperhead struck defensively, its fangs penetrating through her hiking sock into her ankle. Natalie immediately felt sharp pain and looked down to see the snake quickly retreating. David rushed to her side and immediately recognized the bite, having received snakebite training during his EMT certification. He helped Natalie sit down and examined the wound, finding 2 distinct puncture marks that were bleeding moderately. David immediately called for emergency evacuation while applying basic first aid. A rescue helicopter arrived within 90 minutes and transported Natalie to the University of Virginia Medical Center. Emergency physicians determined that the bite did not require antivenom treatment, since copperhead envenomations rarely cause life-threatening symptoms. Natalie received supportive care, including pain medication, standard antibiotics, and tetanus prophylaxis. Her vital signs remained stable, and the swelling around the bite site was moderate. However, her elevated blood glucose levels from stress created an environment conducive to bacterial growth. Natalie's initial recovery progressed normally over the first 3 days. She was discharged home with oral antibiotics and instructions to monitor the wound site. However, her diabetes had been poorly controlled during the hospitalization due to stress. 2 days after discharge, Natalie developed increasing pain and redness around the wound site. She initially attributed the symptoms to normal recovery and delayed seeking medical attention. The infection had taken hold in the damaged tissue, thriving in the high glucose environment. When she finally returned to the emergency department, bacterial cultures revealed methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, MRSA, a dangerous antibiotic-resistant strain. Despite immediate admission and aggressive treatment with vancomycin and other powerful antibiotics, the MRSA infection had already spread extensively through her leg tissue. The resistant bacteria proved difficult to control, and the infection progressed to necrotizing fasciitis. Surgeons performed multiple emergency procedures to remove infected tissue, but Natalie's compromised immune system and uncontrolled diabetes hindered her body's ability to fight the infection. The bacteria entered Natalie's bloodstream, causing septic shock as her overwhelmed immune system could not contain the resistant infection. Her blood pressure dropped dangerously while her heart rate increased as her body tried to fight the systemic MRSA infection. Despite intensive care treatment, including multiple powerful antibiotics and surgical debridement, Natalie's organs began failing from overwhelming sepsis. Her kidneys stopped functioning properly, and her cardiovascular system collapsed. Natalie died from septic shock and multiple organ failure 10 days after the original snakebite, killed not by venom, but by a resistant bacterial infection that her compromised immune system could not overcome. David remained at her bedside throughout her hospitalization, devastated by how quickly a manageable injury had become fatal. The case prompted Virginia health officials to review protocols for treating snake bites in in diabetic patients, emphasizing aggressive antibiotic therapy and closer monitoring for patients with compromised immune systems. Natalie Crawford showed how underlying health conditions can turn minor wildlife encounters into fatal complications. Just when you thought snakes couldn't get more dangerous, click the next video for more fatal encounters that will make your skin crawl.